Hey everyone, welcome to another match of Temur Delver. Today we are playing Rakdos Goblins. So, opening hand looks good. We have a threat, we have Serum Visions, and so we have some permission. 3 lands, pretty much the maximum we would want to see in an opening hand. Unless the other 3 cards were just amazing. Generally speaking, the first play is always Delver, especially against a deck that you don't know about yet. I think Aether Vial is probably a safe card to counter. Generally speaking, a lot of decks that are playing Aether Vial, they'll keep greedier hands, meaning maybe they have a lot of creatures, not as many lands. And even if that's not the case, you just don't want Aether Vial there. It's a pain, and you don't want threats being accelerated onto the field. So here, Delver doesn't flip. That's okay. Hopefully next turn we get 2 flips. So this is what I mean. Okay, great. We get 2 flips on Delver. This is what I mean. Our opponent didn't have a second land drop, so they were really hoping for Aether Vial to resolve, and it didn't, so that was the correct play. And our opponent gives up, so that was a quick match. As you can see, something as simple as turn 0, technically, counter of Aether Vial can pretty much put our opponent out. Now, we didn't see any creatures apart from Cavern of Souls giving away the fact that they're playing goblins, but there's not too much information being given out there to our opponent's credit. That being said, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We could pretty much guess what our opponent's gonna be playing. I'm a fan of keeping in Stubborn Denial for now, but sometimes I remove it against creature-heavy decks only because it tends to be a dead card for most of the game. But again, we're not sure if our opponent is playing a mix of non-creature spells as well. It's very iffy. Opening hand is not ideal at all. Too many lands, just way too many. This hand looks better. So we still have 2 lands, which is great. We have the ability to dig with Serum Visions. We have our turn 1 threat. So that's all good. We also have permission. So our opponent got his second land drop, which is good news for him. Munitions Expert. Okay. So they're going to deal 1 damage to our Delver. Our Delver dies. That's a little annoying. Now I got a bit hasty here. I kind of paid 2 land. I kind of played 2 life. I didn't necessarily want to dig with Serum Visions yet. I want to keep permission mana up. Okay, we'll let that through. He's more or less done his damage by entering the battlefield, so yeah, we're gonna let that go. We're not gonna mana leak that, but we can bolt it. Now, I'm not sure if I actually did bolt it here. Okay, now this is why you save mana leak. Chalice on 1 this early on would definitely suck. I'm not even sure why I was thinking there. That's clearly a mana leak target. Now what's scary is, I would hope that our opponent does not have a second Chalice in hand. That's a risk. So we have Mana Leak and Misty Rainforest on top. I technically want both, but it's a hard decision. It's definitely a hard decision to make. we have Bolt and Tarfire, so we do have two modes of removal. We're gonna wait for now before we pull the trigger on any kind of removal. We want to see what our opponent's gonna play. So yeah. So he's gonna look at the top 4 cards of his library, and I believe put any number of goblins into his hand. So that's a whiff. He just got 1 out of it, which is great. So we're gonna take out, we're gonna take out the biggest threat there. We're gonna take 2 damage. That's okay. At this point, at this point, do we want the mana leak, or do we want to go and cast our Hooting Mandrills? I decided on getting rid of the mana leak. That was going to be the next card due to our Serum Visions, and just cast our Hooting Mandrills because we need to get a threat on board now. Luckily, that also allows us to keep Stubborn Denial up with Ferocious, so Chalice will not resolve, or any other non-creature spell, and we could do removal if necessary. Can't do much about Goblin Matron. He's going to be able to go and search his deck for whatever goblin he needs. Usually I'm used to seeing Goblin Piledriver show up here, but let's see what they take. So this one's weird. It's kind of like a. I honestly did not expect to see that card, but I guess it's kind of acting like a lord for this deck. Now we drew another land. Definitely not what we wanted, but it is what it is. Attacking in at this point would not be prudent, but they also don't have any kind of attack that makes sense. So each non-human creature that enters the battlefield is going to get a +1/+1 counter on it. Currently that doesn't do anything. He's going to cycle his land. He still has no profitable attack here. If he attacks with 1, it's going to get blocked. If he attacks with many, who's he really going to block? We're going to take out the main threat, that 3/3. That's going to be the most annoying one. We definitely don't want bigger goblins coming onto the battlefield anytime soon. He's digging for something. Would really love to have known what was going through my opponent's mind and what he was trying to dig for, but I guess it is what it is. Maybe he just knew it was going away and he wanted to draw cards, but that's fine. Okay, come on. Alright, he's gone. So again, no real profitable attack from my opponent at the moment. Now, of course, I could attack in, but he would almost certainly triple block and kill my Hooting Mandrills. So, no profitable attack for me as well, unless I put my Hooting Mandrills into the air. I don't think I do it yet, though. I would save that for a bit later. I would rather it be a surprise for my opponent near the end. Alright, so don't need a land, but a Tarmogoyf is definitely necessary. No targets for Destructive Revelry, but the question is, do we attack or not? Now, if I do attack, I lose Stubborn Denial mana. So, not necessarily something I want, but I think I'm taking the chance here, thinking, well, listen, worst case, if it's a chalice or some other artifact, I can destroy it. I also get to draw my Tarmogoyf this turn and put it onto the battlefield, so it's kind of accelerating my threats, further stalling the board, essentially, at least on the ground. And our Tarmogoyf is a 5/6, so he's more or less going to chump him each time. Surprisingly, the Goblin deck is not accelerating as fast as expected. Now, Metallic Mimic is coming onto the battlefield, and that's a perfect destructive really target. Almost certainly will be taking it. So our opponent is playing around here with Putrid Goblins, persistability, and he was able to actually deal enough damage to my Tarmogoyf to kill it, which is extremely annoying. I'm going to get rid of Metallic Mimic immediately, because that's definitely the biggest threat right now. Nothing else I can do on the board, so I'm just going to let it go. Yeah, so again, no profitable form of attack. Now I have Lightning Bolt, and I'm going to get rid of the Sacrifice Outlet. That's allowing our opponent to kind of abuse Putrid Goblin, but I'm going to wait. There's no rush yet. So this is a stall. Again, our opponent could attack in, but he knows I'm going to block the best creature he has on the board. Looks like he's also flooding, but it's okay. We have time. We got Hooting Mandrills, so almost certainly going to cast it. Yeah, definitely going to cast it. At this point, not too concerned about making our future Tarmogoyfs smaller, if we even draw anymore. Yeah. So now we have 2 Hooting Mandrills. That's significant, okay? Because it's further stalling the board, but it's in our favor right now. The main issue is that Mana Leak has now lost its utility unless our opponent casts a 4-mana spell, which is highly unlikely in a Goblin deck. So that's going to resolve. So we have another Hooting Mandrills. We can't cast it right now, but we will eventually once we start actually screwing around with our opponent's board. Here I'm doing a bit of math to think, okay, well, I mean, if I attack with both creatures, I could expect them to be blocked enough to kill at least one of them, but most likely 2, and at which point I could bring in a Lightning Bolt to prevent that from happening. Yeah, so I'm doing the math, and I know I have a backup of another Hooting Mandrills, worst case, and I think it's time. I really don't want to wait much longer for our opponent to draw some sort of Haymaker Goblin. So as expected, he does extra blockage on 1 Hooting Mandrills, which is okay. It's to be expected. He's essentially going to lose all of them, but I needed to force his hand at this point. I really needed to force his hand. So I'm going to bolt, yeah, the biggest one, or one of the big ones, and he's going to lose them all. And he's also going to take 4. And yeah, I think at this point, since Force of Negation is in hand, I'm pretty confident I would be able to counter a non-creature spell on his turn anyway, so I don't need Stubborn Denial up. Again, Mana Leak most likely would be dead at this point, especially with Cavern of Souls. So now, that was a huge, huge swing, at least in terms of battlefield tempo. Murderous Redcap is scary, but he doesn't have the second piece to make Murderous Redcap a game winner. So that's going to resolve. He's going to deal 2 damage to me, but that's okay. I'm definitely forcing me to speed things up. Now again, I'm doing some more math here. Definitely need to attack in, because if he finds the another Metallic Mimic or something that allows Persist to, you know, negate itself, then I'm kind of screwed. So let's see what our opponent has in store. So you drew more land. I'm perfectly fine with that. Delver doesn't flip, but Hooting Mandrill's not necessarily bad. Uncastable at the moment, but if more things happen and some of my stuff goes to the graveyard, that's perfectly fine by me. Oh boy. Delver flips. Ancient Grudge is currently useless, but that flip is not useless at all. Nothing will essentially kill Delver because we have enough counter magic. Let's see what our opponent has. Chalice. Now, we're not going to let that happen. Odds are we don't need any more of our 1 mana spells to close this game out, but that's not a good excuse to let a Chalice resolve. At least not with this deck. Now, in theory, we could have let Chalice resolve and sort of our Ancient Grudge, but I decided to counter it anyway. So now I'm doing some more math, because I know 3 damage is going to go through. No matter what, essentially. And enough trample damage will probably go through to the point where our opponent is going to die. And I'm pretty sure I had my math right there. So no matter how he blocks, he's dead. Now, something I didn't take into account here was that he could, in theory, sacrifice his Murderous Redcap to kill it and then bring it back with Persist and deal 2 damage, but it won't be enough. It won't be enough to save him here. Because the minute the Murderous Redcap dies, trample damage is going to go through. So, even if he killed Insectile Aberration, you know, it wasn't enough to kill Insectile Aberration, so I think he just miscalculated there. Even if he did kill Insectile Aberration, he'd be taking a ton of damage, and it would have ended the game. So that was interesting. First game went by really quickly. We could thank that for a good turn 1 play of countering the Aether Vial. And our opponent also didn't get any more land drops, so that's a win for us. Game 2 really stalled out on the board. That's usually not good for us. We don't do well with board stalls, at least not ones that go on forever and ever, unless we have Huntmaster on the battlefield, because then Huntmaster at least allows us to play around, destroy creatures, or ping our opponent back and forth and gain us life, and um, try and make us go wider than our opponent. That being said, there was no need for Huntmaster in that game. We just needed to have some key attacks, and if you go back and look at that second game, I think we only attacked 3 times, and 3 or 4 times, and that was enough to take our opponent out. Even though our opponent at almost all times had more creatures on the battlefield than we did, they just weren't doing enough to deal with our threats, and that's essentially how we want it to be at all times. And when we do attack in, if we are going to sacrifice a creature with the attack, we want to make sure that we are still coming out on top in terms of total resources and total power on the battlefield, and that's exactly what we did in that game. So overall, very good. I don't think I disagreed with too many of my plays. Looking back, I think all the moves that we took in those 2 games to defeat our opponent were the correct ones. Of course, it's easy to say because I won, but I think this is a good example of how to deal with an aggressive, go wide, aggro strategy. So, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.